Jordan Shanks, welcome into the weeds, mate. It's fantastic to have you on. You are one of Australia's most successful and notorious podcasters. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers. It's not a high hill to climb, I'll tell you that.
No.
I reckon with your list of guests, you'll be up there too. You'll probably be like number 3 after Hamish and Andy. There's a lot of crap in Australia.
There is,
and I'm part of it.
I hope to add to that massive.
You want to add to the shit?
The massive pile of dung that is Australian podcasting. So let's start, mate. Where did you crack out of the egg? Like, let's find out a little bit about you because you're a bit of an enigma. Where are you from, mate? Like, is it true that you grew up in Bellingen in the North Coast? You spent some time up there?
I spent some time there. I didn't grow up. Well, I spent years there.
Yep.
Let's put it that way. And I was a child. Does that count as growing up?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it does.
Well, yes. And then the rest of it I spent all over Sydney and Lithgow as well. Yeah, so I'm kind of like a child of the world. Everything except your target demographic, which is Western Sydney.
Oh, yeah.
And now
Well,
that I am a YouTuber, Christ, I wish I spent a bit there. Just so I understood the psychology.
Well,
You know? But like all I get from it is they like halal snack packs and that's it.
well, and Red Rooster, but does actually
does it?
I have never actually seen anyone at Red Rooster.
Me neither.
Like,
I'm there, but no one else is there.
I've never seen anyone. I've been at the airport in Sydney, and there's a Red Rooster there.
It exists.
It exists, and there's never been a customer. The guy's just standing there, and he's a cardboard cutout. I think it's a front for it's some clever marketing ploy of McDonald's or something like that. Have this
I don't know how it could be a chain.
yeah, I don't understand at all. But I think Lithgow counts as Western Sydney. It's
Does
sort of
it?
It's like the satellite.
We're getting west though, aren't we?
We're getting west. We're getting west. So you grew up all over New South Wales. Mate, when did you discover that you were really annoying and there was enormous power in being a pest? Were you an annoying child?
Yes, of course I was. At school, I was annoying. I think at home, I was actually quiet and out of the way. But at school, yeah, definitely. I think I was one of those kids that... well, you know what else as well? I think I was a kid that was annoying, but when I saw that the teacher kind of gave that face, just like, fucking kill him. I was just, yeah, okay, yeah. And I'd shut up. I wasn't the ADD kid throwing bricks, you know? I wasn't that bad. But I was annoying.
You were just challenging the powers that be on the facts.
I don't know. I think I was just bored and dyslexic. It's just hard to read. That's what you do, I guess. Instead, when you just can't really pay attention to the words of the book. I don't know. I still to this day don't even know what it was, but I did definitely assume class clown position very quickly, and I think that it was mostly because I noticed very early on that I have a theatrical flair that the other children just didn't possess. And so, obviously, you just play to your strengths, don't you? Or at the very least, here's some advice on a weed podcast for success. I think that you should probably do that. That's definitely something that you've done throughout all of your career, I've noticed. You're definitely an MP that thinks outside the box. I'm not saying you're annoying, by the way.
Oh no, I'm proud.
You are annoying, but I'm not.
Like I think John Ralston Saul said that the role of a true Democrat is to be rude to power, and I don't think anyone in Australian, like the body politic of Australia, has been more rude and more effective to power than yourself. You've really annoyed some incredibly powerful people. You've torn down some pretty powerful hegemonies in New South Wales, and you've held people to account. But you're theatrical. You certainly are. And so you went to Newtown School of Performing Arts. My stepdaughters go there. Was that a pivotal moment for you? Did you had I think aspirations for the stage or acting, but didn't transpire? How come? How come we didn't?
No, I never really had any aspirations for being an actor. You know what I did actually have aspirations for? I will say this. I had aspirations for basically exactly what I am now. I just thought it would be more glamorous than it is. But as we were talking about before, Australia isn't exactly known for showbiz. It's known for sheep shearing and mining. It's
Crocodile attacks.
Crocodile attacks.
Like Wolf Creek mass murder.
Wrestling animals. That's
Yep.
what it's mostly known for. Like when you go up to Townsville or something, you go to the airport and they'll just have the best rodeo rider in the world immortalised in a statue. That's how you get notoriety here. Being here and being me is kind of just like, you're a dickhead. It's like, yeah, fair enough. Don't you think?
Well, Mark Latham famously said that politics is just showbiz for ugly people.
Showbiz for ugly people. Was that his quote?
That's his quote. Which I
That's
think
resonated because I know that quote exists. I thought that it was a way older quote. I thought it would be something from like the 60s or something. That's incredible.
No, that's one of
what a Winston
Latham-
Churchill-esque
I know.
quipper.
Just he described the Liberal Party as a conga line of suckholes.
I knew that was his classic.
Yeah, but showbiz for ugly people, and I'm proof positive of that. So you.
No, you're not. Trust me. Look, I'll say very mean things about you, but no, you're all right.
I'm handsome.
You're a handsome boy.
You're very handsome.
Thank you.
You're a handsome man, and you
Yes,
took
I
it on
am.
the road. You're a model. You're on the catwalk. You say you actually took it. You were out there modelling. What were you selling? Like toothpaste in Malaysia? What were you selling?
Yeah, that kind of shit.
That sort of
Let's
shit.
go. Toothpaste in Malaysia, mostly. Yeah, I don't know. I went around Asia for a bit. That wasn't bad. I'll tell you what. Being a male model isn't great and spectacular. You're basically just this hanger-oner that obviously there's just a bunch of billionaires trying to fuck the female models, and then you just like, yeah, you can go on the yacht as well. It's like, can I have a canapé? Don't touch that one. Go over there. And just, that's kind of like your job. It's just pathetic. I'll tell you what, when it gets to your age, this is your retirement plan when you inevitably get voted out. Here's what happens to you. You go and start selling watches.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what, when you hit your 50s as a male model, if you maintain the silver fox look, that George Clooney thing, that's when the dollars start coming in.
Just the rugged, selling some
Jeeps.
Jeeps and
That
a
kind of
$300,000 watch.
That thing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You get that feeling, don't you? Especially when you're walking around here and you walk past any of those luxury stores of a suit or a watch and you see like some guy in business class sitting there reading the paper and that's the shot and there's the watch there.
Yeah.
You always sit there and you're like, that guy's got it all.
He's got it all. He's buying some Dolce & Gabbana like loafers, and they're like $8,000, and you're like, why?
yeah.
Why not me?
Why not me?
Why not me? Why am I pulling up my lime green Lamborghini and buying a $15,000 wallet? Who has wallets anymore? But so you're a male model. And I've got to say, you did the sort of sulky brooding thing quite well.
Yes, I did. I think pulled a good blue steel.
You did a blue steel, but it looked a little bit more, I've got to say, a little bit more petulant, a little bit more like I'm annoyed that I'm at the back of the shot. Like, it just always looked a bit, which was good. But you did that for a few years.
Yeah.
And then you thought, I might better get an education, or was that after? This was after.
Oh no, that was concurrently. It was just.
Was it?
I was, I went to an Australian university. I wasn't exactly getting educated. So I had
International
like a lot
relations,
of time.
wasn't it? You did.
International relations.
So you're not as silly as you look.
No, look. That was one of the. I think that generally kids. Come on, let's just call a spade here. If you're getting an arts degree, why? I really think that to this very day, the only thing that I ever got educated on, and I think that it was honestly worth the 40 grand of HECS or whatever I accumulated, was you go overseas, you go to Korea for a year, and there, purely because we were in an English-speaking class and the dean was Korean, obviously, and didn't know what was getting taught, we got taught how politics really works by our teacher, who was some guy from Canada who obviously left Canada because you're not allowed to teach politics in a political course, which is exactly what happened in that entire degree. Like, all they are training you to be is some box ticker in Canberra. That's it,
I think it's remarkable. It's a really important point that we don't teach civics. We don't teach people in this country, at all. We learn about Gallipoli and we learn about...
That's it.
Yeah, Eureka Stockade and bits of all these sort of just someone throws a dart at some historical events. It's like a lucky dip of historical events. There's no connectivity, and the actual the Constitution isn't taught at school, really. You know, like the constitutional debates, no one really knows, and how our political system like works or doesn't work isn't taught. We're not taught civics.
Nah. Now, that's a weird one. And I think that that's very reflective in the public. I think that you're absolutely right. In fact, that should probably be, I would say, a little bit more important than geography and knowing what like the latitude of the equator is. Might be a little more important to your day-to-day life to know that if you're going to protest the Iraq war, maybe don't bother the mayor of your town about it, you know?
I was a councillor. This is how bad it was. Like I was a councillor out in Orange, so you know, grassroots.
Oh my
democracy.
God!
I know.
I forgot about this. Yeah,
oh, yeah, for 8 years, and I thought I was a big deal.
Yeah, big boy.
I was a big deal. I was in the Central Western Daily regularly. So
Yeah.
I was in there and I was on the, 2BS FM radio going, the man's, doing the wrong thing. I was out there, protesting against everything. And I was working with a guy and I'd been working with him for 6 years. And then, after 6 years of sitting in a truck, because I was a stonemason as well, tradie, driving around, he said to me, he turned around and said, he goes, Jez, he goes, when do you go down to Canberra? And I went, what? And he goes, when you got elected, how do you get down there? It's just on weekends. And I went, what? And he goes, I said, I'm a councillor. The town hall? And he goes, yeah. And I said, the council is in there. And he goes, ah. And even when I was a state MP, most people would go, so what's Barnaby Joyce like?
Yeah.
And you'd go, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's Canberra. That's federal politics. I'm a state MP, so we're in Sydney. And they go, oh, and they glaze
my
over.
God.
So the discourse is horrendous, isn't it? Most people...
So bad.
And because they don't know, they feel a sensitivity to it. They don't want to feel like dumb, so they don't talk about it. How it works.
So they shouldn't, I don't think, honestly. Look, I'm very embarrassed by what I thought even 10 years ago. And then I think, okay, most people haven't spent 10 years thinking about this. And so as a result of that, anytime I ever hear anyone ever discuss politics, I'm just like, just shut the fuck up, because it's not even, you know what I'm talking about? Yes, you can have political differences, but when you don't know the difference between state and federal parliament, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? It's just a complete waste of time. And that's the level that most people... Look, to quote Winston Churchill, don't you think this is a very apt point? But it's just like that. I always think of it. The older I get, the more I'm like, that is the most true thing anyone's ever said about politics, which is the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with a random person on a train. That's it. And I think that you're so right. If you just started teaching people civics in school and they had a basic understanding of these things, it'd be a much better country.
Yeah,
honestly.
I totally agree. And because that conversation about how politics works and, how political parties work and electoral funding works and how bureaucracy works and all the rest, in just in a modern context is a lot. But you have to consider that in the historical context to see how things got to this position, and we're just not doing that.
That'd be great. Wouldn't that be incredible? Look, I'm a big fan of the Eureka Stockade thing. I've got my own conspiracy theories about why we learn about Gallipoli, but I think that historical context is severely missing in all of our discussions. And as a result, and you'd be very aware of this as a parliamentarian, there'll be people coming up to you all the time, probably sitting there and just being like, I don't know, why don't everyone have universal basic income? Just do it. I saw it on Facebook or something. It's well, because there's a whole system set up in place, and it's not some the man kind of there's a lot of laws in. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of stuff behind all of this, and this must be I don't know. As an MP, it must be very frustrating trying to. I suppose that is your job though, to sit there and try and explain it. So.
Well, you do. You try and explain it, and you say, look, it's just like a Titanic. It's like a huge ship of state.
Yes.
And you've got an idea. It's been constructed. It's been sailing a long time. The captain's drunk. He's not even there. And everyone's just, worried about icebergs and not just, the ship of state just sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
And you're out loose there, bolt.
And you're up there talking about the loose bolt or something that can change it.
Yeah.
And it's going to take time.
Yes.
Any change is going to take time. Everyone just goes, well, why can't you just do it today? Yeah. And, they want a revolution. So, it is very frustrating. And but I think it's by design. I think that we've dumbed down our community because, if there's that other famous quote, if you showed the people of, showing people the making of laws is like showing them how they make sausages. They just lose confidence in everything if they see it up close because they see all the buff heads, having good ideas pulled apart by, vested interests and the like. And I think that's why we end up with the politicians, we deserve, like me. Sad but true.
How did you make that jump from local council to state? What happened there?
Just like
word of mouth?
Just total fluke, really.
Fluke?
Yeah, just fluke. So I just managed to wrangle my way onto the Greens upper house ticket number 3, and then just a miraculous preference flow. I was actually elected in 2011 on the back of family first. Like Pauline Hanson was going to get elected, but all the family first preferences went out in the count, and they flowed to the Greens rather than family to One Nation because the family first people didn't like Pauline Hanson because they thought she was a racist. So it was a total fluke. I got elected by like 1,000 votes out of 5.2 million. So the Greens didn't want me. Like they didn't want me there. They knew I was going to be problematic because I was a stonemason, like a working class stonemason. Sometimes didn't play well with others in terms of, being told what to do and signing up to the manifesto. So there was a bit of gritted teeth grinning when I got elected, and it wasn't, it was always going to end badly. So it was a total fluke that, someone from a working class background ended up in Parliament, and I got there and went, oh, okay, this is, not. This hasn't been built for me. This has been built for lawyers,
yes,
by lawyers.
By lawyers, for lawyers.
For lawyers who've complicated everything.
Yes.
And they don't want to tell everyone how it works because they want to maintain their power.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you felt profoundly stupid for 4 years, 5 years, as you tried to learn all the Latin phrases and lingo and...
Oh, yeah. Like, I had no idea. Like, I remember going in there and going, all right, turn the computer on. Trouble. Help desk. Where's the help desk? And then, like literally sneaking off to read, an act of parliament. What is it? But it was good because it made me go back to the beginning. So I went and looked at, the Constitution, Parliament. And in New South Wales, we do have a good Parliament. We really do have not the people in it, like the elected MPs all the time, but the actual, the powers of the Parliament are really important. I really do believe that. And so I went and talked to the clerks and said, right, for dummies.
Teach me,
Teach me. How does this work?
Yeah.
What are the rules?
Yeah.
And so I went to school. And so for a couple of years, and I used the processes of Parliament to sort of undo my political opponents.
Yes,
which was very, very useful. And then I sort of learn after a time, well, hold on, I'm going to take this out to the streets and out to the community, and you've got to build a sort of movement and educate people about an issue outside of Parliament if you want to do something in it. The politicians only react once there's an angry mob, really, in most cases, which I think that you would know.
No, well, yeah, no, but see, this is the whole thing. I completely understand what it would be like being a parliamentarian, having talked to so many of them over the years, and it's just this endless, exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, this is how I imagine a premier's job. Endless spinning plates constantly. And then one starts to get really wonky, and it just fuck, and then that one starts getting really wonky. And I think that it's actually way more sinister when it comes to New South Wales, purely because, as you're saying, you'd have less talent there. And then on top of that, there's just fewer. So usually there's the Minister of Climate Change and agriculture and budgie exports. Like they're just everything. Like they've got like 8 different portfolios.
Yeah, I know.
It's so I fully understand how you just get immersed in that world and you can't leave it, and you can't go out, as you're saying. It makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of endless bureaucracy coming at you.
Yeah, endless bureaucracy, endless process, and endless reaction to everything.
Reaction.
So it's hard to lead or do something of your own volition and initiative, and that's by design. That's I think that the powers that be don't want they don't want the kids getting their hands on the levers, and I think that's really disappointing. And they certainly don't want to be, pushed around by the community and reacting to, activists like yourself. So I want to raise, the issue of like how you came to be you were a male model, you're doing an arts degree. How did you end up podcasting? How did you because looking back, you were one of the pioneers of podcasting, and it's like 10 years or so, I think. Why did you look at that medium and think, hold on, there's something in this? Why did you set that course?
I'll tell you why. I think it was mostly because I started interning at the ABC and other commercial outlets. You know what it reminded me of so much? Remember that episode where Bart goes to work for Crossy and he says, "Wow, we must be the luckiest people on earth." And then the camera guy goes, "I wish I was dead." And then Crossy just goes, "Don't listen to him, kid. This is a dream factory. Now clean up my toilet." Like that's working at one of those places. And it was exactly the same thing. You look at how the sausage is made in media, and immediately something didn't feel right to me about it intuitively. And this is something that I've noticed more and more over the years when it comes to politics. And knowing that you're kind of the same as sort of like a blue-collar schmo that somehow randomly wound up there because of some labyrinth pinball machine being, "Congratulations, you got elected." It's really weird. Yeah. I know.
It was Powerball of politics. It was like
It was you.
I was just like Yahtzee. Oh shit. Okay. Well, the first time I went to Parliament, I was an MP. Like I was like,
True.
Yeah, true.
That would have been it.
Yeah, that was it. I turned up and went, okay, first day on the job. Okay. It was like
job.
being, like in the submarine, and
Have you ever gone back
submarine, driving a submarine, how to? Okay. Going, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty much the same thing. I think you went there, you realised that media in Australia is, like everything else, a upper middle class profession that is extremely nepotistic, and you only get in there because of connections and family ties. So those kids that just had no talent whatsoever, "Oh yeah, sick, I'm program director now, mad." It was like didn't even have to go to uni. They'd be there, and then you'd be some 23-year-old being like, "Coffee, sir? It's too hot." So that would be my life there. And anyway, but it was more just the general atmosphere of the place. Something didn't feel right. Then I started getting into media bias a lot, and then I started to notice why that was the case. And so I thought, all right, well, I could just scrounge around here, probably get demoted down to Darwin or something like that, and then just work your way back to ABC and get, I don't know, a producer on a night show or something. Or I could just start doing my own stuff online. And so I just went and started doing it there. It was there, And then the other thing was, just at that time, because I feel like I was just a little bit too old for this by like 1 or 2 years, but people below me at university were saying, people professionally do YouTube. And I thought, there's no way. People just put their little home videos and stuff on it. But then they showed me, and I thought, okay, this is possible. And so it was those two things marrying each other when you realise I can pretty much say whatever I want, and there is no program director over us going, no, let's tone it down a bit. There's none of that.
So, freedom of expression, really important. And freedom of voice has been, and it's something that like I'm only just realising. Like I feel like, it's 2025, and I think, podcasting, that's something that's been happening for decades, and that ship has sailed. But when you actually look at it, it's only in the last sort of 5 or 6 years that it's really broken out. To the point where it's challenging, conventional media, so print media, like who reads newspapers and, who believes anything sort of online anymore.
Well, can I just say, while we're on this, don't you think that is a big endemic problem with people that are in Parliament? I think they're the only ones that do read the newspapers anymore. And so as a result of that, because they are just in that Canberra bubble, they are in that Macquarie Street bubble. And so they're constantly sitting there and being like, oh no, the Australian did a hit piece on me, forgetting that maybe a guy on business class looked at it and was like, yeah, watch my stocks, and that's it.
Yeah.
It really doesn't have the power it used to.
No, that's exactly...
But sorry, go on with your point.
Oh, no, that's exactly right. And so there's this... I think that there's a sense in the community, in the political class, that podcasting is a thing that's, like already too huge and you'll never get into it, and how could you possibly do it? But yet it really is just still the very beginning. Like, you're one of the first, you're one of the most successful, and also showing the incredible power of it. But it's, like, this is why we're doing what we're doing, because we believe that, one, we're shut out of, like, social media platforms. The mainstream media, just don't want to talk to the legalised cannabis party. They're like, what do you guys know about anything? We go, well, we've been thinking about this. We've been mulling it over. We've come
That's
up...
what we do,
Well, that's what we do. We've thought long and hard, like some of the sage old dudes in our party have been thinking about the one issue for 57 years. It's like the supercomputer in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at the end of it. They go, what was the question? after 500,000 years. Oh my God. So we've thought about things, but they don't want to listen to us. So we're going to, fix and bypass, go around them. And that's what you've done to spectacular, with spectacular success. So let's talk about that. Like, one of the issues you really took on was the water issue in Australia. Like, in New South Wales, we've had this just abominable situation for a long time where the Murray-Darling Basin, one of the biggest, most important river systems in Australia and globally, has just been absolutely raped by vested interest. Big cotton coming in, sucking it all up, polluting the landscape, paying off politicians. And how is it that you took it upon yourself to get involved in that campaign, and to great effect?
Well, it's always the same thing with all of us, honestly. Anytime anything ever happens at Friendlyjordies, it is purely because some concerned citizen wrote to us. And then usually it's my producer, Christo. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes it's some other people in the organisation. But we'll separate the vast, vast, vast amount of nutbags that write into us. Usually, I feel so sorry for local councillors. The amount of nutbags you would have to deal with at local council, because they've always got some scheme that's going to bust open. Did you know that it's not even part of the Constitution? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Anyway, so that's 95% of them. 5% of them, though, every now and then come in with something that is very concerning and quite explosive. Water was definitely one of those. And I think that also it was a combination of that and the fact that I did spend time in Bellingen, I did spend time in Lithgow, and so weirdly, and I've never really noticed this until I pointed this out when I was talking to someone else who's trying to get up in the YouTube world, and I said, look, it was pretty much what I was telling you, which is I am very jealous of the fact that you grew up in Western Sydney, because I feel like Western Sydney, if you have a cultural education in that place, Western Sydney culture sort of permeates out to the rest of Australia. This is why lads are big now. This is why like fat pizza and shit took off. It's all Western Sydney stuff that comes out. So anyway, I was saying I was really jealous of that. And then he was saying, yeah, but you kind of had everything else in your upbringing. And I think that a big part of that was living in rural Australia. And you would know full well that no one listens to them because why would you? There's like 20 of them. But I understand those people, and I understand the concerns that they generally have. And as you would be fully aware, especially if you're in Bellingen, I suppose, but generally there's two types of people in rural Australia. There's those that are really concerned about the environment and those that just completely rape and pillage it. And I don't know, I think I've always had quite a sensitivity towards it as a result, because when you are in rural Australia, it's not like Hyde Park all the time. You really do see when a riverbed dries up what that does. So you see droughts, you see mouse plagues, and they're devastating. And you have to live in that. And you see that like after it goes away, it doesn't go away. Like it just actually permanently degrades the area. It's not the same after that. So I don't know. I'm kind of feeling like quite choky about it now. So I think that that's the main reason that I was particularly sensitive to anything rural New South Wales. Let's put it.
Yeah, I certainly I get that sense from you, and that's how I felt too. I felt like during the Millennium Drought, I was like, we're running out of water, like that, it's that simple. Like we're running out of water. There's towns running out of water. There's, dams 7 times bigger than Sydney Harbour that have no water.
Yes.
And people are going, oh, well, we'll bottle water in, or, we'll drill.
Desalination.
We'll pipe water in, or we'll put in some bores. And I was going, this is a long-term a problem. And, yeah.
There's no water now.
There's no water now.
Yeah.
There's places where people, can't wash their ass or, have a drink or run their hospital because, water's pretty fundamental. And I looked at it and went, well, who are our local representatives? And they were usually some, pointy-head dude with one eye and, 3 teeth and just going, and they were the National Party.
Always.
And I just thought they were just like the National Party, just an absolute boil on the arse of Australian politics. Just absolutely terrible.
Do you agree with this? I was thinking about this the other day. Honestly, if the National Party didn't exist, the Liberal Party would be bearable. I'll take the Liberal Party in Adelaide any day of the week over the LNP in Queensland. It is a complete and utter cancer. It really has destroyed mainstream politics in this country entirely. And it is because of that exact problem that you're talking about there. They can just endlessly command votes off of the Liberal Party and stop them from doing anything that, resembles, dare I use the phrase, common sense.
Yeah. Or is it against, is in the public interest and against some, vested interests like Big Cotton or Gina Reinhardt or, you just, you look at them and you say to them, like, what do you, they say, oh, I'm defending regional Australia. And then you go, well, let's have a look at regional Australia. And the overlay of the most socio-economically depressed parts of Australia and where you have National Party MPs is exactly the same. Like Cowper, like where we used to live, Bellingen, is the most socio-economic depressed electorate in Australia outside the Northern Territory. And it's like where the National Party began. And I just...
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's where the
idea.
Yeah. The Page and the North Coast is where the National Party began. And I just always say to myself, like, why do people keep voting for them, the National Party, while, like, everything dwindles and these country towns disappear? Like, Bellingen, like that valley has a declining population. It's got huge, pristine rivers, like wonderful national parks, these amazing coastlines, and people are leaving because there's nothing there. And a National Party member who just keeps going on about, Aboriginal crime, and that's it. And, the carbon tax and,
Yes.
And it's interesting to see that there's independents now, turning up in regional areas to challenge them. I think Kaz for Cowper's one, and I think Dan Tehan's getting a run for his money down in Wannon, that's against the Lib.
Now, can you just explain this to me, because I've never really understood this? What is the psychology behind endlessly voting for them like it's some sort of Game of Thrones blood oath to the Thai family or something.
I think
Why?
I don't understand. I think it is just a cultural thing. I think it's because there's so few people there, and it's just like we know them. You know, they've been here.
And they gave me the school certificate.
They gave me, and they played football. You know, I played rugby union. You know, with them in Cowra, and you know, my dad bought sheep from their uncle, and that sort of stuff. It's like it's that cultural stuff, and they wear the same clothes as me. It's just completely tribal.
But yeah, look, I'm sure someone else from there also played footy with them and wears cowboy hats. So why is it always just the brand of the Nationals that keeps getting voted over and over again? I understand that there are independents that are giving them a run for their money now, but I just don't understand how it took this long. And it had to... The socioeconomic problems that you're talking about, as well as the environmental problems, had to get this bad. As in, you're really talking about a real severe decline in quality of life. That honestly, when I go back and I go to some of these places that I grew up in and I look at them now, they are worse places to live, objectively. So in your lifetime, you've seen the decline. I don't know. They're still hanging around.
I don't know either. It's vexed. I've got to say that, because when it comes to the water issue, you've got these mostly massive corporate interests sucking literally, the guts out of the river. All these communities downstream complaining about the river, but still voting for the people who do nothing about it. So it's one of those issues. Maybe it's because they, there's just not an alternative that is palatable and is, as I say, like culturally and tribally,
Isn't it incredible how much culture plays into politics? It's the old Republican expression of, politics flows downstream of culture. I can't get over it. Because I've been reading a lot about Republican strategists recently to learn the dark arts. That's one of their main creeds. I mean, for years they were doing the same thing that the Liberal Party was. We're the party of strong economic management. And then they realised, no one is voting for us on strong economic management. We can completely rinse the budget. No one cares. This is purely a thing of we listen to country music. That's why they're voting for us.
And now we've got now we've had this sort of decade or more, like 2 decades of culture wars, and there's this, this angry mass of people going, actually, the people we're up against in the culture wars, there's not many of them, and they all live in Marrickville, and they're all in Brisbane. Let's get them. They're all in Washington. Drain the swamp. Let's, and now they're pushing back with a vengeance to the point where, someone as unelectable and just abhorrent as, Peter Dutton, like just the toxic avenger of politics is a chance. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Isn't that weird? Wouldn't have picked it. Honestly, even 2 years ago, I wouldn't have picked that he'd even have a chance. And you're right. It's purely, he's basing it entirely off of that. But again, I think that this goes back to your whole point of civics. When a population is completely uneducated about what a government actually does, they sit there and they think, they are basically Prime Minister to make sure that local councils fly the Australian flag on Australia Day. That's the main reason you're voting for a Prime Minister, not to negotiate with Indonesia or anything. That's all side to the big issues.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what drives it now. And it's honestly quite... You must have it all the time. Like, it really scares the shit out of me when you're talking about things like the Murray-Darling reaching points where it's like, even if you improved it to this point, it is not ever going to be as good as it once was because it's being so damaged. That's not talked about, ever. It is the endless culture war. So I don't know. It's just like, I really like your civics point. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's I think it's key. I saw Four Corners, which was talking about the challenge to the major parties that minor parties and independents were, and there was this old sheep farmer, cunning old sheep farmer going, well, what we need to be is a marginal electorate. We'll just organise 49 0.9% of people to vote one way and 50.1% of people to vote the other way. And we just basically put the hand out every election, like Eden Monaro, just Monaro, potato.
Yeah.
We just put the hand out every election going, everybody come on down, we're for sale. Our votes for sale. Why not? I mean, if that's going to get your high school built and the highway bypass and
Don't
whatever.
you think that's always exploited as a dynamic? I remember reading for a very, very long time, there was 5 seats in North Queensland, and they were sugarcane, sort of their cotton industry up there, as is cotton, but sugarcane's always been their main driver. And there was 5 seats that were just able to hold any government to ransom for decades because they were able to put that together. This is a major reason why the reef is in the state that it is now, because of those 5 seats and their absolute taking advantage of the entire Commonwealth to get what? More fertilizer subsidies or something? This is something that... This is what also really angers me about this whole thing is like I don't know. People sit there and they think the whole point of politics is so that I get what I want. Doesn't that freak you out?
Yeah,
it really does. Like, there's no understanding of maybe there's an entire country at stake here or a state, and people should be like giving a little to get a little or something. No one wants that anymore.
Well, there's only one horse in the race, and that's self-interest. And like politicians play to that, and it's interesting parallel like between the effectiveness of the National Party. We've got to give them that. They've always been a rump, but that rump is hanging on by tooth and nail. It's hung on for decades. The effectiveness of them, and you look at the US politics, like the Farm Bill. Like there's just swathes of senators in the US and congressmen, and their whole job is that the farm lobby, in the Midwest elects them to basically get this huge subsidy. The Farm Bill.
Yeah.
It's always the first bill that each new Congress deals with, and it's just, they're rent-seeking. We want our subsidies for ethanol, and that's it.
Yeah.
We can plant corn, and that's it. And that's the, literally trillions of dollars of subsidy. Yeah. And again and again and again, you see that with the National Party in there rent-seeking for, big corporate agriculture or mining interests, making sure they get their diesel fuel rebate and all the rest of it.
Do you agree with this? I've been thinking about this a lot because recently we were doing a comparison of Australia and New Zealand and why New Zealand is just objectively a worse country now. I'm kind of glad that our overlords are miners. I would hate it if it was just big agribusiness that was the final say. As you're saying now, they are the National Party's rump that sits there and, exploits a bunch of subsidies. But having them their Liberal Party is the National Party. You would understand this coming from rural Australia. I don't know, something about mega farms is just so... It pales in comparison to all the other vested interests in the world. It's so evil. Every time. And like when I go up to Dubbo now, and because there's always hippie farmers that are always trying to show me what they're doing, and you look at how healthy their land is in comparison to their neighbour that is just this mega cotton field that just has a bunch of robots doing all the labour now. There is no one on it anymore.
Yeah, the tractors don't have people on it. They spray the, whatever they're spraying out with drones. There'll be a farm that's like 100 square kilometres and it's got one... like Irish backpacker working on it, and it's not even owned by like the farm. The guy who's running the farm is just the manager, and it's owned by,
Well, someone was explaining this to me. They're kind of a serf now.
Yeah.
I don't know how this works, but you get into cotton. I can't remember the economics of it, but pretty much over time, Monsanto slowly sort of owns your farm, and you're sort of just... Yeah, you're a feudal serf to them.
Yeah, you've got to go out and get a massive amount of debt to a sort of rural bank to buy the chemical, to put the crop in, which you've got to get into more debt for the seed and the fertiliser, to make the money to pay back some of the debt so that you can then buy it next year as you slowly, disappear into more debt. And you only need like 3 years of drought and then it's gone and they buy you up and
that's how
over.
It works.
Yeah, and so... And they there's this idea that Australian agriculture is, these sort of mum and dad farmers, and they're out there and they're growing food and all the rest of it. And that's some of it. But they're not really the productive, big, powerful interests. It's like these big corporate multinationals that own huge, like the other thing that always surprises me is like how successful the farm lobby has been in sort of saying, it's our country, I own it, I can do whatever I want on it. I can do whatever I want. I can laser level it, I can do whatever. If you're in the city and you want to put a veranda on,
good luck.
like or a deck that's like, to catch some sun and maybe grow a tomato plant in the city, you've got to go through
5 years of approval.
5 years of approval, and it costs you $85,000, and the neighbours get to come and look at it. And
need a cultural heritage inspector to come around. Yeah.
That's exactly right. To check out whether or not it's destroying the amenity of Sydney, and yet out in Warren or somewhere like that, you can laser level 400 square kilometres, cut down every tree, spray whatever you want, and there's no approval whatsoever.
No, nothing.
It's got rural zoning, and that means just freedom.
And then the other thing that really scares me, this is something that I'm constantly, endlessly worried about, and you would probably have some good insights into this. Simultaneously, look, I do always want to preface this point because I hate being one of those people. And the bloody bureaucrats in Canberra with their red tape. I'm pro red tape. I wish a party would come out and their entire thing was they just had the socialist alternative red, and it was just the more red tape party. That's all I'd want, just endless red tape. I'm a huge fan of bureaucrats sitting there and saying, no, you can't build a veranda, right? But that institutional capture that happens to one of these things. So I know that when the incoming government came in, for instance, there were so many problems with the Environmental Protection Agency. There were so many problems with the Department of the Environment because the Nationals have been running it for 10 years. And so they just keep running it like the National Party is still in power. And to remove all of those elements out of that bureaucracy, then you're kind of caught in a catch-22 where it's, well, if I remove all these people, then no one knows how this bureaucracy functions anymore. So you kind of have to listen to these people. And you hear over and over again that like the environment minister or something will be asking for really crucial environmental reports. And the bureaucracy will say to the minister, no. And this is something that really scares me about long-term Liberal national governments being in power, is even when they're not in power, they're still in power. Because once you start capturing those institutions, you need a solid decade to clean it out just to get back to baseline. Am I wrong?
Oh, no. It is absolutely actually how politics and governments work is that it's the bureaucrats. It's the Sir Humphrey. It's the guy that and usually the people who are the secretary of the department went to the schools with far more conservative, far more likely to be conservative, to have done a PhD in public policy. They've gone to the expensive school. They know all the big end of town. They're in charge of this gigantic government bureaucracy. The new minister turns in and says, right, I want to do these things. And the secretary turns around and says, yeah, well, maybe. We'll turn that ship of state around really slowly. First, we've got to do this, and then we've got to do that, and then we've got to do that. And you're only here for 3 years, and I've been moving around you have a look at the mandarins who run these government departments, and they jump from state to federal departments, they move around, and they've just been it's pretty much 300 people who've been moving around every government department in every state and federally for 5,000 years. It's like they're Methuselah, they've been there. John Ralston Saul talks about it in Voltaire's Bastards, about the managerial class and how they just basically took over running, well, first of all, the Catholic Church, and moved into universities and made sure they controlled that, because all the first universities were basically part of the church. And then they moved into government to make sure, well, we can't have, those pesky premiers and ministers and people. And I think the right of politics knows that that old school tie, put the person in the job, greasing the, the wheels. And so that's why when someone comes in with with an idea to, do something like, a carbon tax or save the Murray-Darling Basin, well, hold on, son, we need to, take some time to think about that. And you realise at budget estimates that there's all these sort of people who come in, these mandarins that have been there for, 30 and 40 years. And then you just look at them, they go, they know that you're going to come and go and they're going to be there forever.
And as you're learning, they've got 40 years of what you had to try and cram in 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They built
they know.
They built the system.
Yeah.
And they've got these systems of just, okay, we want to obfuscate here. Okay, we better do what they're saying, but we'll give the impression we're going to do what they're doing, but then it just slowly let the air out of the tyres over time.
Yes.
Yeah, like all of that. And it's super frustrating. And again, like not even politicians are prepared for that, because most politicians, there's a certain part, there's a political class and a political elite, but there's a lot of numpties who come in there like me who've been, a school teacher or a stonemason or whatever, or an electrician or, a real estate agent, and they just go, what? They got no idea. And there's no manual, like how to outfox, the secretary for the environment, Nah.
And you know what else as well? I bet you they do have a manual for how to outfox the minister.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just 101. It's the game. And like, if you want to know how politics works, the civics that people should learn is yes, minister, and yes, prime minister. Like it's a satire, but in actual fact, it's just 100% the truth. That is how it works.
Right.
You've got some, sort of retarded minister trying to do something, and you've just got them just absolutely having, rings run around them by some bureaucrat.
Yes.
And that's what happens, and that's why things don't change. And I think the conservative side of politics are, aware of that more. So
Well, something that they've done, which I'm endlessly fascinated by, and I don't even know how you begin to fight back at it. And see, this is the whole thing that's very annoying when you're talking to the average person that's sitting there and saying, when are we going to rise up? You don't even know how. You understand? Like, this is such a way more complicated game than even I understand, and I've been thinking about it non-stop for 15 years, right? But yeah, one thing that I think that they've done very, very well, and this is, I think, across the entire world, your conservative parties, I think that they kind of see elections as a bit of a sideshow. I think they see it as, oh yeah, let Dutton do his little thing. If he gets in, great, whatever. They are much more into institutional capture. That's the thing that they've been focusing on for years. In fact, that's something that the Republicans, for instance, talk about and brag about in their books, is the Democrats were constantly thinking about how to win Congress and the Senate, and we were thinking about how to stack the courts. That's the real game.
Yeah,
that's
take
what you
the
should
military.
Be doing.
Like how many members of the of the Democrats are on the Joint Chiefs of Staff? Like do you leave Duntroon or a military college in the States? As a progressive. Highly unlikely. If you're running the U.S. Marine Corps, or you're an admiral, are you going to be, you're far more likely to be a Republican and, a bit of a Nazi.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
And that suits the conservative side of politics. So these institutions that funnel people into these positions of power, they really are super powerful, incredibly powerful. And the Conservatives, they use them. And I think too, these huge lobby groups that you see, turn up, industry lobby groups, the Minerals Council and the rest. There's just, the Conservatives, essentially just the political wing now of...
They're consultants.
Yeah,
that's what we always refer to them as Friendlyjordies.
Yeah,
the political consultants of these corporations.
Yeah, that's right. They're just like they go, okay, we've got our people doing these big industry groups are going, okay, we've got people looking at global markets, we've got people looking at, the cost of production, and we've got people who are just controlling governments, and doing, a bit of PR and all the rest of it. But really that's, they're just the political wing of part of a big sort of corporate, structure.
I know. And you know what else really freaks me out about this now that we're on this? I'm so glad that you were bringing this up, because when you think about it, for instance, Peter Dutton, I would obviously say a lot of things about him. As we all know, I'm a huge fan of him, obviously. But if I were to critique him, I would say that he is a very intelligent man. I honestly do see him as their Paul Keating, but not good at making a speech.
Yeah.
So he's not a great rabble-rouser, but he is the man that came up with the Department of Home Affairs, and that's a terrifying department, but it's also genius. It's a huge concentration of power. It's sort of creating like a CIA and FBI in one wing, like every deep state just crammed into one department that he has complete say over. He's quite a visionary in his own right. But I endlessly think about the fact that he has to simp and pander to people like Gina Reinhardt, whose brain has been melted in the West Australian desert, can't string a coherent sentence together to save her life.
I saw that video of oh my God.
Okay, did this happen to you? I don't know, because you actually do talk to these people. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I just couldn't believe it. I was going, like, that person is not, like, is struggling to string words together.
I know.
It was like really
well below average IQ.
Oh my God. I was just like, oh my God. You'd think that she'd have a Neuralink put in or something, like to upload, you'd have, or just a holograph turn out, to talk in full sentences.
I don't know.
Without all the weird pauses in everything. And you're like, oh my God, well, money can't buy taste or brains. That's clear.
Well, that's what obviously it must have been brought into her heiress mind that I don't need to think, I don't need to learn the alphabet, I can pay someone who knows how to write.
Yeah. That
must be what's vaguely dinging around in that mush.
I think that for average people, I think there's a story. I don't know if it's Cervantes or someone tells a story about this guy in Spain in the Middle Ages who's had this injustice, and he has to see the king, and he spends his whole life to see the king to have this injustice redressed. He's gonna go to Madrid or wherever it is to meet the king and have this injustice undone. And he goes through all this shit mayhem to get to the king to have this injustice against him redressed and overturned. And he spends his whole life doing it. And he gets to meet the king, and the king is just a drooling idiot. He meets the king, and the king is just sitting in a chair, drooling on himself, just like with, 3 teeth going, ah. And he just goes, oh my God, I've wasted my life. And there's this assumption that power is going to be, have this powerful intellect.
Yes. Well, see, this is the whole thing. I've talked about this a lot behind cameras, but because we've been off for a while, but I will be endlessly pushing this when we come back. I really think that your Elon Musks and your Gina Reinhardts should have just stayed to being these mystery figures in Forbes magazine, because it works on me. It works on everybody, obviously. You think they've got billions of dollars, they must be geniuses. And you have people in Forbes magazine writing them up, oh, incredible business move. Its acquisition was such a genius move, when it's like, not really. Like, you could probably be 5 years old and realize, oh, if I combine this company with this company, I make more money. Yeah. It's Lego blocks, essentially. And, like, they didn't even think of it, you realise. And then you actually do see these people talk, and it's so cringy, so off-putting as well, knowing, and this is the thing that does really freak me out, is the fact that you do have highly intelligent people like your Peter Duttons, like all of these mandarins within Canberra, that are the servants of these dimwits. Yeah. And they're the ones controlling the ship. They are the captain, and they don't have... the rest of the brain's jobs is to try and implement their stupid ideas that don't seem to be based off of... I mean, at least with Elon Musk's ideas, it's based off of fucking fantasy novels like Atlas Shrugged and shit. Like, I don't think that that's even happening with Gina Reinhardt. I think that she saw a tweet of Elon Musk's and went, yeah, let's do that. And then they have to just implement this secondhand tweet somehow into reality. And that seems to be like where all of the intellect of Australia gets pulled into. And what really scares me about that, again, it's like that dumbing down of society that we're talking about. You go back to something like the Accords in the 80s. This was an example of your Paul Keatings and your Bob Hawkes coming out and saying, look, inflation's going through the roof. There's no growth. All right, let's get the unions and business together. Let's hammer out a deal so that we can stop this from happening because we're just going into nowhere land with this. And so when you had somebody sit there and explain this, you could get industry, unions, the general population, the rulers of Australia all on board because they'd understand this is in everybody's benefit. Yeah,
and Keating sat down. I remember like being like a teenager and going, oh, here's the Treasurer of Australia explaining to me how things work. And I was sitting there going, oh, like, fantastic.
Yes.
Like yes. Walk me through it. Yeah. I'm not going to, in bite-sized chunks, and like walk me through it and took the country with them. And to great effect and great benefit for all of us now, like superannuation, like such a huge, fundamentally good thing, and explaining to people, okay, this is why we do it. There's going to be a cost, but, it's in the long-term public interest. And you don't see that now. And like, so we've got these billionaires who are, much stupider than they look, and politicians who are much smarter than they look. And one of them, going back to the National Party, I got to say it, and this is controversial, is Barnaby Joyce. Barnaby Joyce is a master. Like, he looks like a total rube. He puts it on. But one time I caught Barnaby Joyce in a bookshop.
Oh, yeah.
And he was in Bellingen at the alternative bookshop, and he goes down. It was on the set. He was heading down from Tamworth down to wherever he was, like having his coastal holiday down at Nambucca Heads, wherever he was in the caravan park. And he was loading up on books, eco philosophy, socialism, all the books. He was knowing his enemy. He was like going, how do I develop a strategy? He's clearly sort of the green left is his boogeyman. And so he was in there loading up, and I said, oh, Barnaby, doing a bit of reading. And he said, oh, mate, got to keep up with issues. And you actually, there's a really interesting interview with Barnaby about how much of an intellectual he is. Now, he doesn't do that in public. He doesn't come out and say, well, I've been reading, John Pilger's book and this is why it's wrong, or, I'm going to rebut Kevin Rudd on, that he just goes out and say, crack down on, those people who are setting cars on fire in, Moree. That's all he's got to do. Yes. He knows he's just got to hit a couple of, buttons, yep. Implicit racism, just hit that one, tweet about the Wallabies, a couple of cultural things, turn up and,
vote for me to give a middle finger to Canberra.
Yeah, exactly right. Drain the swamp and all the rest of it. Yet, again, smarter than he looks. You've got to be.
No, you can definitely tell.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell. In fact, I remember from hearing quite a few people saying that he used to frequently intellectually show up Malcolm Turnbull, who was a real show pony about his intellect. And Barnaby Joyce was smarter than him.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. So we really don't like. There's just these sort of tropes that are trotted out there, and the cultural warriors in the inner city and on the left going, oh, these people are just stupid. And I'm going, well, why are they beating you? Yeah. If they're so stupid,
yes.
How come they're in power most of the time?
Yes.
So what does that say about you? How come they're convincing all these people that you don't even, connect to?
Yeah.
And, I think it's an interesting thing. I want to talk about another National Party leader, John Barilaro, because one of the things that does sort of bust apart politics is when, the community rises up. There are good journalists out there, Michael West, there are good journalists out there who do their research, who focus in on an issue, and they go again and again and again and again. And you really did that with John Barilaro over a whole range of issues, and, I think contributed to changing a government. Why'd you do that?
Honestly, again, it was the sensitivity thing, and it all stemmed, for me personally, it all stemmed from his, I can't even remember what it was called now, it's so shocking that I can't remember, but the Heritage Act, the the Wild Horse Heritage Act, the protecting Brumbies oh my God, for whatever reason, again, it always boils down to some rural environmental issue. It really grinds my gears for some reason, and I developed a severe hatred of that man from that moment on, because that was so wanton and obviously so cheap. He did it for nothing, as a favour to his mate, destroying something of true cultural heritage, which is Kosciuszko National Park. And also, you go down to Kosciuszko National Park, and it's probably one of the closest things on the mainland to something in Tasmania, where you go there and you think, this is a alien landscape almost. I once remember going
it's called
up...
snow. In
yeah,
Australia.
that's the one. That's
Alpine. It's called like a real
so
mountain.
Aussie, isn't it?
And
what is this?
What is this white stuff? I'm in New Zealand, and he wanted to turn that into a cattle ranch, and
and a theme park.
Yeah,
it's some dumb idea that he had in his head of calling it, I don't know, like Snowy Hydro Land or something. And I remember he had some amazing moments like his, I'm investing money into flying cars. Look, as much as I think we all agree, we all miss John. We all do. We didn't know what we had until it was gone.
Yeah, well, there was a real chink in the armour there of the coalition, and there was a gap, and you ran through it, and you really, attracted a lot of attention.
Yeah, because he wasn't a Barnaby Joyce.
No.
He's no Barnaby.
No, he was no.
Did you ever interact with him?
Yeah, I did. I remember he came into... The only thing I really had something to do with him was he came into a function and walked past a table of incredibly intelligent and powerful women and said something... and I'm talking about cross-party. It was like a meeting of like a women's group. And so there was some ministers, and these are federal and state ministers, leaders of industry and all the rest of it. Some, real heavy-hitting women smashing the glass ceiling, way smarter than him, and massive achievers in their careers, and walks past and says the most sexist thing I've ever heard in my life. Something about, kitchens. That's all I'll say. And it was so gobsmackingly ridiculous. It was a career killer.
Yeah, but that killed his career.
Well, it could have. If someone had there was sort of... He was in all I can say is he was in a place where there's sort of Chatham House rules. You could sort of say what you want in this forum. And he said that, and everyone just went... Oh my God. And everyone just went, can you believe he said that? To the point, you know how we made redress? He took every single person that he'd offended a massive, big stainless steel container of lasagna. And he turned up, and for weeks he was walking around going, here's a lasagna.
What?
Don't tell the Herald. And it worked.
Yeah, of course it worked.
It worked. It was.
And I'd imagine he's a good cook.
And it was a fucking amazing lasagna.
Yeah, you had some.
Oh, we all had some. We were all going more, John. It's actually. And the joke was it was John. It was John that needed to be in the kitchen because that was
the irony.
The irony, the irony. And so that's apart from his abysmal, land clearing, the snowies and the koala issue. Yeah. The koala killer was just a real. It really resonated with people. People going, koalas, yes, let's keep them alive, at least some. And to have a guy, just smashing back at that, it showed, it really did writ large just what a, buffhead attitude that the government had struck and how the tail was wagging the dog.
Yeah, no, massively. I think we were very blessed with the fact that he was in there and he was sort of a charismaless Trump figure in the sense that he was just endlessly stepping in it. But for whatever reason, Trump just is Donald Trump and I don't know how he does it, but it just seems to propel his career further. But John Barilaro had the exact opposite effect, where every decision that he made was his own demise over and over and over again. I don't know how the hell he got to the top of the Nationals, but as you're saying, it's very endemic about what a complete and utter dearth of any ideas or discipline, anything. It's. I suppose it's just any institution that's just been too successful for too long. It just becomes its own little mini Roman Empire. And John was your classic, just Roman emperor at the top. What are you doing there,
Nero?
Nero. Well, yeah. Why? Why you? Surely there was someone in Paul Toole or whatever. Just chuck him in. I still to this day don't know how he was the deputy premier. That was shocking. And I think that was honestly, if you really think about it, more than anything, there was two things that I think really, really worked in cementing his decline. I think it was him just bragging on audio about using the Treasury as his own personal
that meeting up in the Hunter
campaign.
Valley with like Andrew Fraser.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate, we'll get you whatever you want. Just,
Yes.
we've got these slush funds.
Yeah. Not even, I can't believe it. It was honestly movie stuff.
It was.
It wasn't it?
But it was just the thing that, gets said behind closed doors, out in the open. And so there it was.
But that's the whole thing. Is that, like, I don't know. I would always imagine your average politician would be a little more tactful and use kind of those legal terms and talking boring politician speak if they're doing that, if they're discussing that. And again, I think we were just blessed by the fact that John was something's missing in his brain and he could never learn what you obviously sat there and thought, okay, I'm an idiot, maybe I should learn. And I don't know if he had some weird arrogance in his mind of like, yes, I'm deputy premier, you have to do what I say in there. It's just a dumbass in school that was premier. I always think of him as, I always had the character Yilmaz when I started out, and it's just like he became premier.
Well, he did a lot to damage the coalition, and
didn't he?
He sure
He really did.
He really did. He really did smash their their air of invincibility. But there's been some blowback. You've had the Defo case, and that's been resolved, and more recently because of your outspokenness. You've literally had your life put on the line. You've had some blowback in the form of let's call it what it is, like an assassination attempt. How are you bearing up? Like are you living in hiding? Are you do you feel safe?
I am, but
for people who don't know, someone tried to and then successfully burnt down your house.
Yes. I'm alive purely because I'm so stupid that I left my keys in Melbourne. So I had to sleep in my office that day. And that's why I'm alive. Purely because I'm so disorganised that I'm even more disorganised than people that accidentally firebombed the wrong house the first time. So what's the opposite of outwitting? Like I outdumbed them. And that's why I'm here. And so anyway, honestly, I don't ever really think about it. I don't think that I thought about it to the day. You know what I have noticed though? And it's really strange. You do have this moment of reflection after there is a moment of, I could have died. People probably at home have something similar, maybe with a car crash or something like that. And you think that you would have some weird epiphany and it would suddenly hit you, but it doesn't. You just keep going on with your life, and then you're sitting there arguing with your wife going, just take this parking spot over here. Oh, who cares if it's the 2-hour parking? Just pay it. That's just keeps going on with your life. Then like a few months afterwards, you realise, holy shit, like I couldn't have been here. But I hear this on people that are on death row all the time as well. They just say, okay, now you're going into this room, and they go, okay, and then the governor acquits them, and then they're in their cell maybe a week later shaking, going, oh my God. That happens?
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's basically my only
I think it's
insight
called
into it.
PTSD.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, I know something that'll help with that. Yeah.
Well, feel free if you want to. We've got the double alien head bong there, so if you
I
feel
noticed
like
that.
knocking one back, mate, just let me know.
I don't know if I can. I'm not a pro. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
It's
Can
a little-
you do that shit? Like the guy with the beer hats drinking out of 2 straws at a... No?
Not anymore. I used to be able to do like a headstand, bucket bong, all of that. But
Age makes fools of us all.
yeah, that was months ago. I'm out of shape. But you've survived. Like I've had death threats, and you just sort of go. Someone sent me a letter saying I'm going to cut your head off, and what was I doing? I was supporting marriage equality, on council, and someone said you're sick. I'm going to cut your head off.
Yeah, classic.
And then do something to my corpse, and I was going, I'm sick. How are you going?
You're going to do something to his corpse.
Yeah.
A man as well.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a handwritten death threat, and it was slipped under the door. That was disconcerting.
Yeah.
But 3 days later, I was just like, oh, that's right. Yeah, I got someone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you move on.
Yeah.
You move on. And New South Wales has moved on. We don't have John Barilaro. We don't have Gladys Berejiklian anymore. We've got a new state government, Chris Minns. How's he going? Do you
No
like
idea.
Chris?
I completely checked out now because I just focus on election to election. I move where the tides are. So I haven't even focused on New South Wales government at all. The only things that I do know from it, is that they have had massive fights with the bureaucracy at every turn. You know what, honestly, you know what I'll add to your watch list of shows? I think you've got Yes Minister, but you know what else I think that you've got, especially when it comes to New South Wales? The Wire. Go watch The Wire. That's New South Wales in a nutshell, don't you reckon?
Oh.
It's just this endless thing of just like, okay, I promised like an education boost. Oh, actually, the budget's way worse than I thought. Fuck, now everyone hates me. And then there's that dynamic endlessly happening. I don't really know. I haven't paid it. I don't know what you're doing. I assume you're doing something.
I'm doing this. Like I've checked out too, in a way. I mean, I'm there trying to legalise cannabis. It's a work in progress. It's taking. It's going to take me a while to convince people, but I'm working away on it. But I think the state government's competent, and they're so far resisting. The hubris. This week, aside, I mean, there's been a little bit of it was a great headline, the Van Halen thing with Joe Halen, having to fall on her sword. Great headline, bit of a scalp for the Daily Telegraph. But apart from that, it's been a pretty competent government, and they're herding cats, and got a difficult environment to govern in when you've got a housing crisis, inflation, and getting $20 billion pulled out of the GST. So it's a difficult environment, big issues. Like I had Penny Sharp on the podcast, and she's like transforming the energy grid, dealing with climate change.
And running the Senate in her spare time.
Yeah, running the Senate, and also environment, dealing with land clearing, and managing a national park estate that's like the size of Germany, and just getting on with it. But we do have an election coming up, so you must have turned your mind to the federal election.
Oh yeah, massively.
And it's going to be a big one. We've got Albo up against Dutton. Like, there is a real sense, I think, with Albo, of drift. Like, what's happened since The Voice? Where have you been? And he doesn't seem to be cutting through. What can Albo do? Because he just seems to be drifting into, minority government at least, and potentially, a return of the coalition government. If you're giving advice to Albo, and I'm sure you do, ring him up at 3 a.m. and say, do this.
Oh yeah, constantly. Albo's a huge fan of me. Yeah. Like he is just like, that guy's an annoying shit, and I can't really, I know. So, You know what? I really don't know what we do about this because, yes, the Lord giveth in the sense that we do have digital media, but the Lord also taketh away, which means that now every bozo with a microphone can just spout their opinion endlessly. And it seems to just be this, whoever can gain the internet better wins. There's no substance to what they're saying. And obviously, if you just sit there and do the I'm giving everyone a middle finger attitude that most people online do, without any nuance to it at all, that's what always is going to grow you. You've got that. You've also got the fact that moneyed interest has figured out how to game algorithms very effectively. You were seeing that in The Voice, obviously. That was a kind of a taster of it. In fact, I think that that was the most interesting thing about The Voice, was the fact that, especially in Australia, really doesn't take that much. A couple of tens of millions of dollars to reach everybody every day on their TikTok account in ways that speak specifically to them. It's far more effective than the old mainstream media model that's happening and dying. I don't know what you do about that. I think that honestly, this is, if anything, is making concentrated capital more effective at getting what it wants. The only thing that I can say to everybody out there is, you've got to fight back and start your own TikTok accounts, I think is the only thing that I can say. But you really cannot rely, as we're talking about, really what you're electing when you elect a politician is somebody to be sitting there trying to get buckets of water out of a sinking ship very fast while everyone sits there and says, you're not taking enough buckets of water out. I really feel like that's the general thing. When it comes to what Albanese is offering the public, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to, I really don't like where we are as a country, in the sense that I think that he is the first leader to have offered something like the Accord since Paul Keating, which is the Future Made in Australia Act. Now, that is a truly beautiful vision. And it's not really Labor's vision in the sense that, it is sort of, but it's like, this really is Ross Garneau's vision, like the guy that came up with the ETS. His vision was, okay, price of carbon's dead. I know that he's always trying to push for that, but he's looking for an alternative. And then he thought, well, look, we have a golden opportunity here in the sense that we were really primed. And this would have been a lot better if this was happening back in 2007, but we're still sort of in the position where we can do this, where you are turning the working class of Australia, instead of just being these pit goblins that sit there and dig gold out of giant caves, instead of that, you're turning them into much more skilled, much more educated, and this is the thing that the Liberals really don't like, much more unionised workers working in high-tech factories, where you're turning Australia into sort of this combination of Japan and like a good Saudi Arabia, where the entire point of the blue-collar class of Australia would be to be decarbonising the planet. That's the grand vision of Future Made in Australia. And at the same time, making us extremely wealthy, because not only are we just this sort of giant pit endlessly mining, we're mining, and then instead of that going over to Japan and China, it's getting turned into aluminium and steel here. It's getting turned into batteries here. And then we're the ones selling that out. Now, you would think if you had even a semblance of a brain like Gina Reinhardt, you would look at that and think, that's the way of the future. I could turn from just being this sort of backwater baron to being one of these Saudi princes that controls the entire world. I could go in and buy that supply chain. You would think that the investment class of Australia would think, oh my God, this is a golden opportunity where I'm going to have the inroads into this giant, like grand new future where Australia is doing something extremely positive for the world, and I can get rich off it. You would think that the working class would look at that and think, this is going to make me a lot richer, because to get these jobs, you would have to upskill, and you would be making something that is a very valuable product, and so your labour would be worth more, and on top of that, you would be unionised. But then Albanese tries to explain this, and then the press's response is, did you see that some NRL player made a homophobic remark? What's your remark? This one as well. Stephen Miles lost in Queensland. Triggered? That was their response to this grand vision that was outlaid. I don't know what you do in that situation. It was actually what my editor was pointing out, which is Chomsky's propaganda model has reached its final form, which is, you don't need these grand operators in journalism. It's actually better to just have a bunch of dodos in there that don't even understand what is being put towards them. Then no one will ever understand what is being said. Sorry, that's my big spiel about the election.
No, it's there's a couple of really good points in there, and that is that the media class just seems to be, like just churning through like 25-year-old, like graduates who come out They've got no political context. They come out. They want to gotcha on the news of today, the cultural, what's happened today. Albo's made a gaffe. Someone's done this. They don't really talk about the economic fundamentals, the nuance. They come, they go. You don't have these political commentators that are around for a long time that really can educate the population and upskill them. And the other one is that I think one of the really key things, the great things about the Future Made in Australia policy is it is upskilling this working class.
Exactly.
And
that's what everyone should be focusing on.
That's what they should be focusing on. And that is like...
Well, the Liberals are. We just need to make that very clear.
They hate that.
You saw it in the Gina Reinhardt Christmas thing. The rest of them didn't even understand it, didn't even mention it once. Peter Dutton made a very clear point about this of you want to kill this because this is going to unionise Australia. This is going to make the working class more conscious.
Upskill. See, because
exactly.
in the States, that red wave that was 40-year-old, underskilled, undereducated, underemployed, under pressure, unhappy men who went out there and said, this system hasn't worked for me. I'll do anything. I'm going to vote for, the Krusty the Clown of politics over here because it's something. He's making promises. But here's Albo actually putting on the table, because I remember being 20 years old and Keating came out and, I'd done my HSC and, hadn't done very well. Went to THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the Hobart College, went out until 30.
How fitting for this.
I know, 30% youth unemployment in Tasmania, nothing, no jobs, nothing, nowhere to go. And Keating brought in job skills, and you could go down to the CES, and they'd give you $1,500, which back in 80s, back in the 80s was like a fortune. You're like, what? And you could go and you could get a skill. You could do scuba diving. You could be a forklift driver, a crane driver. You could get skills, and it made a massive difference to the working class because they could go out and get a ticket in something, start a career, go to TAFE, do these things. That's what Albo's putting on the table, and that's of enormous benefit for the working class. But the Conservatives hate it.
Yep, and they're aware. And this is sort of the same thing that they've learned about superannuation as well. Superannuation, I think, is a bit too far gone, but obviously at every turn they try and kill it. This is a main thing of one of Dutton's main policies is basically, I want to destroy superannuation in this country by perpetuating the housing bubble. You can use your superannuation, your your index fund interest that is going to be your retirement to buy a house that'll probably implode at some point in value. That's the big thing. That's his alternative vision that he has so far put out for this country. And it's all those big ideas that once they're implemented, no one really knows that they have completely changed Australia. But superannuation at this point sort of is the shadow government when they are in government, just going like, oh yeah, just chuck another 15 billion at WestConnex. Oh, that wasn't enough? 20 billion, That's what's actually building this country now. And that's what really scares me about the fact that if the Liberals get in and they kill Future Made in Australia before it's too far down the garden path, what is the alternative that they're putting us into? Really, it's kind of just 1960s Australia, where eventually you have a completely underskilled underclass without any of the tariff protections that kind of just kept them sort of buoyed at this point. And all you have is just this mechanized mining operation endlessly exporting our wealth. That's the alternative that is getting put out at this election.
One of the other alternatives that's being put out is, and the super money's flowing into these massive renewable energy projects that are looking to decarbonise, we have to decarbonise our electricity generation because it's good for the environment, but also because all of our coal-fired power stations are absolutely clapped out.
Yeah.
I mean, I've visited some of them, and they're built in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and they are literally held together. They're dying with gaffer tape. They're unsafe.
Yes.
Like I remember visiting the Hunter Valley and the power generators there, and there were like whole units which were like, oh, you can't go near that because we can't turn that one on because it could explode. So we've got to rejig our power generation, our power networks. Both state and federal governments are getting on with that. But Dutton, he's got a different view. He wants to build nuclear energy. What do you reckon?
Do you think that he wants to? I don't think that he has any intention of doing it at all. I think it's just he gets to perpetuate the fossil fuel industry and continue to buoy it with endless amounts of subsidies while pretending that somewhere 30 years down the future there's going to be some wonder tech that is older than renewable energy anyway. And I know that you can't even say this. I feel like I'm in safe company here when I say this. I feel like there'd be quite a few hippies watching this. But, guys, the idea that it is safe is such industry propaganda. It really isn't. I mean, they always say, like, talk to the scientists. And then you realise, yeah, any scientist that isn't paid by nuclear lobbies in the United States is constantly terrified by the fact that, like coal, a lot of these are held together by gaffer tape because what do conservative governments do when they get in? Immediately cut regulation. And what do companies do? As little as they possibly can to maximise their profit. That is a very scary idea when you're talking about splitting atoms. And this is the government that they want in charge of that. And that's just one of the problems. The other problem is, by the time that these things are even built, most of the time it'll be too late for the energy transition by 30 years. It's like a lot of the time when they say, oh, it'll be built in 10 years, you can point to numerous examples in France, America, the UK. What are we talking about? Like a blowout of 2-3 decades sometimes?
Yeah, and
the
like,
time that it took to build?
Oh yeah, I think the one in the UK now, Hinkley or whatever, is like 90 billion.
90 billion.
$90 billion, and they haven't even turned it on yet. And the other one too is with whatever you're doing, something might be low risk, but if it's high consequence, like it's going to kill you, you pay attention. If it's like high risk, low consequence, well, it doesn't really matter. With nuclear energy, it might be low, even if you accept it's low risk, but high consequence, you got to turn your attention to it. And so you look at Fukushima. When they were planning Fukushima, they were going, what is the risk of a gigantic earthquake offshore flooding the nuclear reactor and destroying its capacity to cool itself and destroying, the Pacific Ocean for, 500 square kilometres and, making 100 square kilometres inhabitable? Probably low. But it happened. But it happened. And like Dutton announces nuclear power stations, the first two in New South Wales, one in the Hunter Valley, the other one in Lithgow at the former Wallerawang power station site. And what happens? A 4.9 on the Richter scale earthquake like that week. It's a sign from God. So
really,
yeah.
I did not know that.
Didn't you know that?
No.
Like literally the week that Dutton announced it in Muswellbrook.
Yes.
That there was an earthquake that like smashed windows and rattled things off shelves.
Yeah.
And the other one is with the power station in Lithgow. It's in Sydney's drinking water catchment. The Cox's River runs past that into Warragamba Dam. And I'm going, what could go wrong? And like there's literally...
Well, they need a lot of water to cool the engine.
Well, they do. But there's literally people in the Liberal Party who will turn around and say, oh, they've got, they can catch that. Even if it leaks, they'll catch it. And I'm like,
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, they'll catch all those radioactive isotopes. In midair. So we've got Dutton taking his nuclear policy there. Now, before you go, because I know you love international relations, we've got to talk about Trumpy Doodles. We've got to talk about we've got to talk about Trump. And if there ever was an example of just like the wall of noise, politics is just showbiz for weirdos, it's Trump, isn't it? Isn't it just he's winning the political debate by just setting himself on fire every day? Just like, it seems to me like it is a literal circus. Someone out there is trying to have a rational policy discussion and Donald Trump's going, today I'm going to ride the wall of death on a motorcycle. And everyone goes, okay, What am I?
Well, I'm going to have to watch that.
I'm going to watch the Wall of
Of
Death.
course you're going to have
Wall
to.
of Death riding with Jared
Yeah.
Kushner and Trumpy doing this, and he can just say or do whatever he wants. You know, he's going to, like go out and tame a tiger.
Yeah. Or hear Mitch McConnell's budget reply.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, but I think I'll look at Evel Knievel do the loop-de-loop.
Yeah, is that like? But it's it's spectacularly successful. It's just like
Yes.
I'm just going to do a high wire act every day. I'm going to do something ridiculous. Like yesterday it was I'm going to take over Gaza,
Yeah, that's right.
uncosted.
Yeah.
I think today he's saying I'm taking over Gaza, but we're not putting any troops on the ground and we're not spending any money on it.
Yeah.
I'm taking it over.
Yeah.
Bam.
Yeah.
And like, is that like? It's just it doesn't sort of serve public discourse, really, does it?
It doesn't serve public discourse. It doesn't do that. It does create like a lot of vapid interest in politics, which has created this entire industry around. In fact, you know what? I found this out the other day. There are YouTubers in the United States that are making $1 million a week, and all they do is sit there and react to Trump all day. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. This is the phenomenon that is Donald Trump. He has made an entire industry of multi-millionaires, people making millions of dollars a week just talking about the man. That is a level of public interest I have never seen in any field ever. That Kim Kardashian doesn't have that in entertainment. He's done it with politics. It's not good. It is actually quite an ugly thing about humanity that this for whatever reason in people's minds it's like I paid the most attention to this man, therefore he deserves to be president. And as you're saying as before, it's like what the freak show? The freak show. That's what we should have as the president. Yeah. Why? Because I looked at him a lot. That's what's happening. There's also the other thing as well that I think that a lot of this is massively overblown. Originally, when he did win, I thought, oh, it's because of the podcasting generation or whatever. And yes, that is an element of it. But what is never mentioned is the Republicans have spent a lot of money and used a bunch of their consultants creating this entire infrastructure of inroads where you can get Donald Trump onto the Joe Rogan podcast, where you can get him onto Andrew Schultz. And that started by them investing a bunch of money into a bunch of podcasters that are just sort of Fox News, but on the internet. And then these guys, because they're sort of on the internet and they have big audiences, they talk to these other podcasters that aren't really remotely political or think about politics, but they're my friend, they're on the podcast. And so you start creating this network that Donald Trump can just go to the very top and then pick the fruits of 10, 15 years of infrastructure and inroads that are being built. That's one of these things that's explained. But the other one that I was talking about before is just much more old school than that, which is that the Republicans have bought up all the courts, and as a result of that, they have been able to severely restrict voters in low socioeconomic areas that are obviously going to vote for the Democrats. And I think that in the last election, it was close to 4 million ballots that were just taken out, obviously from poor black areas that were obviously going to be voting for the Democrats at like a 9 to 10 result or something. So the whole idea that you have of he's winning hard, there is a lot of smoke and mirrors and illusion to that. I will say this, though. He's playing his role spectacularly, like no one else. And what also gives me a lot of hope is no one will ever be able to beat him. Because what did we have before? We had Vivek Ramaswamy, and it was like, shut up, you annoying nerd. He just doesn't have it. Every time he talks with his whiny little high-pitched voice, shut the fuck up. And then Elon Musk, oh my God. The level of autism, when you look at it, you have to look away. Like, even him making body gestures. No, I'm not even talking about the Nazi salute. The Nazi salute was one of the least cringy things he's ever done. Like, him just walking on stage. What are you impersonating a robot? What's happening? He can't do it. None of the rest of them, I don't know. Trump has a once-in-a-generation charisma. Or once in a like you've never seen anything like it in your lifetime, surely.
No.
No one has it. It's just... He's a phenomenon. That's it.
Yeah, he's just a gangster, really. He's just he's just a New York gangster. I saw him today going, I don't want to be a wise guy. And I was going, actually, I think you are.
You're the definition of a wise guy.
You are the definition of a wise guy.
You're a wise guy.
He'll say whatever he needs to, and he just keep the spotlight on him. That's it. Just all eyes on me. I saw Bernie Sanders came out today and said, I'm very worried that America's being taken over by oligarchs. And I was going, you know what? I think there's a class of people out there who go, at least the oligarchs are out in the open now. Like as if America hasn't been run by oligarchs, by, people who just had monopolies, billionaires behind the scenes, sort of pretty much forever. I think
pretty much forever, yeah.
I mean, the founding fathers of America would have been in their own rights oligarchs and slave owners. And, I own 3/4 of Virginia, and and 400 slaves. And I'm the guy writing the how-to manual on government. It's like it was ever thus. But but what it has done is made people go, oh, okay, well, who are these oligarchs? Is Jeff Bezos? Is it Elon Musk? And here in Australia, we're looking at our own oligarchs, be it, a Simon Holmes Accord or Gina Reinhardt or whoever it is. What's your take on, at home, the push to cap donations, to limit the influence of, your billionaire of choice? Your billionaire might want to, just let it rip, dig, or you might want to, have a solar power revolution or whatever it is. Do you think it should be limited? And there's a bit of a conflict in sort of the progressive side of politics there, isn't there, with some people you would expect to be saying, transparency and continuous disclosure of donations, capping donations is a good thing, but not everyone's singing from that hymn sheet, aren't they?
Yeah, no, isn't that interesting, don't you think? Because this is the whole wolf in sheep's clothing thing that the Teals have done so spectacularly, but not really if you think about it, honestly. It's just, you know what the Teals are in my mind? This is them in a nutshell. It is Liberal voters that can't admit that they were wrong. That's it. And so they go, oh, everyone sucks. We need a new way of politics. What's the new way of politics? To make sure that the climate continues so we can continue to exploit workers. That's new politics. Anyway, my big thing about it is that really separated the boys from the men when it came to independence, because you could very much see the ones that are, like, when people say, oh, we need independence to keep the bastards honest, what they don't understand is most independents are not independents. Like a lot of you would know this full well, a lot of independents have a sugar daddy that is backing them into Parliament, like Simon Holmes Accord, who is, if you think, like, look at that man's record. He is a man, he is a billionaire man-child that used to fund the Liberal Party, and then the Liberal Party, I don't know, kicked him out because he was acting like an arse at one of fucking Josh Frydenberg's fundraisers, and he was like, well, then I'll start my own party. And so you...
and where did he get his money? Where did he get his money? From Dad?
Well, high-frequency trading and Dad.
Yeah. Dad.
What a great guy.
Who ran a basically cattle company across, 3/4 of Western Australia.
No, but he believes that climate change exists. And that's why he's so much better than the Liberal Party. And I think that the reason that you have this big push all of a sudden that, like, you need a crossbench to keep them all to account, isn't this interesting that you never have that when the Liberals are in? Every time the Liberals are in, you need a stable government. You need stability. That's what we need for this thing. As soon as Labor's in, all of a sudden you need crossbenchers to keep them to account. And when you saw that bill come out, you saw, like, the poorer independents that, again, were like you, just sort of this pinball machine, how the fuck am I here? They were sitting there and being like, yeah, I think the caps on donations is a good idea. And then all of a sudden you had people like the Teals coming out and saying, oh, no, this is really bad. This is going to stitch up. This is a stitch up between the two major parties. So if it's a stitch up between the two major parties, why is the Liberal Party voting against it and you're siding with the Liberal Party? Oh, no, it's because, like, they get $90 million across the entire country and I only get $800,000 for your one electorate. Really, you can't run a campaign for $800,000. How much are you getting? And then you look at the Teals, and yeah, okay, not all of it's coming from Simon Holmes Accord. When they say it's an independent movement, as you're well aware, this is an independent movement within the richest electorates in the country. These are really well-off people where they have fundraisers and they go, is 5,000 enough? I've never been to a fundraiser before. This is not you going out there with your cap in hand in orange.
5,000?
Yeah,
Try 50,000 or 500,000. You look at the money that's
huge amounts of money.
Massive.
And then you're out there at your bloody fade in orange, just probably sitting there on one of those dunk machines, just be like, throw an orange at me for $2, and that's your funds.
Oh,
for election. I mean, that'd be great. I would definitely pay for that.
We're literally getting it in the 20s and 50s, but that's for another reason.
But like this is what you saw, and that was such a good indication of what this new idea of independent movement is, which is my whole point to this always is, if you're going to vote for an independent, for the love of God, do your research about them. I am very well aware, and usually when it comes to the rural ones, all for them. I think that there is good independents out there, but you would be aware that there is a lot of wolves in sheep clothing. I think that the Teals are a classic example of that. You could see them, like all of them, trying to rip apart Labor's workers' protections. They're promising that they're going to do the same thing if they get back in. And this is because they represent the elite.
And also, what happens if there is a hung parliament and Dutton only needs 2 or 3?
Exactly.
Which way do they jump?
And one of them, exactly, and the only one that has come out so far said, well, my electorate would obviously want me to negotiate with the Liberal Party first. There you go. There you go. So I just think that it's like a lot of the time when it comes to this, there is a very deliberate elite tactic. And if you go throughout the history of Australia, you can see this constantly, which is that preferably we would like the Liberal Party in. Sometimes their brand becomes too poisonous because of what a scam they always are, that you have things like you had with the United Australia Party, and then they nearly got us invaded. And then at some point people thought, okay, well, maybe this isn't a great idea. And then he just comes back with a new hat and creates the Liberal Party, and then he's in for the next 20 years. Menzies, right? In lieu of that, when the elite know that they can't win every election, they can get bloody close in Australia because of the rank media bias here. In lieu of that, what they try and do is just flood the crossbench with a bunch of their lackeys that they pay for, where they can sit there and frustrate every piece of agenda that goes through by the Labor Party. Now, you are definitely living proof that that is not everyone on the crossbench. But I will say that there is a lot of those people on there. The Teals honestly scares the crap out of me, because I think that the Teals one day will turn around and they'll just be the Hillary Clinton Democrat Party. Don't you reckon? That's exactly what they're moving for. At the moment, because it's trendy to say that you're an independent, they're going that. But one day, the trend will move, and then bam, there we go. We've got our own inner city national party.
And it's surprising that, well, it's not surprising. You've laid out the case of why they wouldn't do it, but there's an example that they can point to, and I'm sure Labor will do this, about why these electoral reforms work, and that is New South Wales, because New South Wales has been one of the most corrupt places in
the world,
in human history.
Yeah,
right? Pretty much. It was
I mean, that's just what, we've always thought about this, but we were a rum colony that was started by convicts, and then with Lebanese and Italian migration, the mafias came in with the foundation of a state run by convicts. We're a unique case. We really are. I remember reading a book once of this guy that was looking throughout all of the world and saying, where would you ideally want to be doing organised crime? New South Wales, baby. That's the place to do it.
It is very organised, the crime here, and really just about carving up the assets of the state, be it rum, then gold, then sheep, then whatever else it is. It was sheep. We rode on the sheep's back, and they just handed out huge parts of the state to the squatters, and then it was something else, a gold again, and coal, of course. So, but New South Wales, we brought in these rules. We brought, and the exact same argument, it's going to entrench the two-party system and all the rest of it, and there'll be no room, and, these parties will get public funding that will entrench. Well, they get public funding on the basis of if people vote for them. So if you get a vote, you get the funding. There you go. That's the reward. But they capped donations. It had disclosure, and we don't have donation scandals anymore. We don't have a system in New South Wales which is run by who can suck up to a vested interest the most, and that is a good thing. You just do not have proper, you have classes of people who are ruled out from donating, like property developers, which has meant that you get better public policy, you have less people before ICAC and less people ending up in Long Bay jail after, taking the brown paper bag and, and doing the business. So it's surprising to see the Teals and others, like Jackie Lambie, she's running a petition against this as well, out there saying, at the Australia Institute as well. Another one out there really, defending their particular set of oligarchs, the billionaires who, fund them too. So it's an interesting to see the wheels within wheels when it comes to those donations reforms. And, I hope that Labor puts its head down and, gets it done sooner rather than later.
Well, let's see, but it doesn't look like they've got a path. I really don't think they do, and it's exactly what you're talking about there, where you're sort of seeing a civil war of oligarchs in Australia. You are really seeing the difference between, I suppose, the mining barons versus the investment class. That's really what's happening with Teals and the Liberals. And so as a result, of course they don't want donation reform. The only difference is that the Teals go out and they say endlessly, oh, we want transparency and stuff. And then they just pull the same bullshit arguments that the Greens do all the time of it's not transparent enough, That's always the argument that they pull. And so as a result of that, they just get some kind of cover with their voters of, well, obviously this, I'm still a good person because it wasn't good enough for me. Or that's always the argument.
It is always the argument.
They're the most particularly annoying ones because I do like the fact that Peter Dutton basically just comes out, looks as evil as you possibly could, and is just in the shadows saying, yes, I am a very evil person. It's cool, good.
There's no
He's saying what we're all thinking.
There's no thin veil.
There's no thin veil
of self-interest there. And what Albo's putting on the table, Farrell's putting on the table, is real-time disclosure. You get the money in. You don't have to wait 12 months before you tell someone where who gave you some money, and it's not $16,900 sort of threshold.
Yes,
it's $1,000.
Yes,
and so it means that because mum and dad. This doesn't capture mum and dad contributors. Most people aren't contributing that amount. Anyone over $1,000 has got a bit of coin lying around. So it means it's a massive step towards transparency, and I think it really does shine the light on the integrity of some of these people who out there singing their virtues all the time, and it's going to be a key debate in the next couple of weeks. So really interesting.
Good.
Hey Jordan, look, really appreciate, mate, you coming on the podcast, and I really appreciate the work you've done, mate. You literally put your life on the line. You're a true Democrat, mate, because as John Ralston said, a true Democrat is rude to power, and I've never heard a ruder person than you. But
skill.
It's a real skill, mate, and it's fundamental to have someone calling out the clowns and saying this is a clown show. The emperor wears no clothes. It takes someone to do that. You've done that with our own Nero, with John Barilaro and others. To personal and financial cost, and I think that's we're well armed. You don't have to agree with everything you say, but we need these voices out there raising the issue, and so I hope to emulate you with this podcast and do the same sort of thing. So thanks very much for the work you do, and thanks for braving the podcast and coming into the weeds.
No worries, it was fun. Thank you.